The day my husband died, he left me many things. Our house, his old photographs, a lifetime of memories. But I never expected him to leave me a locked wooden box that my own children would beg me never to open. I found it 3 days after his funeral. It was hidden at the back of his closet, underneath a pile of old winter clothes. At first, I thought it was just another one of his forgotten belongings. Then I saw my name carved into the lid. For Eleanor. Open only when you are alone. I stared at those words for almost a minute. My husband, Daniel, had never been a secretive man. At least, that's what I believed after 38 years of marriage. We had shared everything. Bills, arguments, family problems, even the smallest things. So why had he hidden something from me? I carried the box downstairs. It was heavier than it looked. There was a small brass lock on the front, but no key. I searched his desk. Nothing. His bedside table. Nothing. Then I remembered something. Daniel always carried a small silver key on his keyring. After his funeral, I had put his keys in a drawer. I found them, and there it was, a tiny silver key. I held it over the lock, but before I could insert it, my phone rang. It was my son, Michael. Mom, where are you? I'm home. Are you alone? I frowned. Yes. Why? There was silence. Then he asked, Did you find Dad's box? My heart stopped. How do you know about the box? He didn't answer. Michael. Finally, he said quietly, Mom, please don't open it. I stared at the box. Why? Just promise me. Promise you what? Promise me you won't open Dad's box. I felt something cold move through me. Michael, what's inside? I don't know. You obviously know something. Mom, please. Then he hung up. I stood there holding the phone. A few minutes later, my daughter Sarah called. Her first question was exactly the same. Mom, did you find Dad's box? I didn't tell her that Michael had already called. I simply asked, Why are you both so afraid of it? Sarah began crying. Because Dad told us never to let you open it. My hands tightened around the key. What did your father tell you? He said you'd understand someday. Understand what? I don't know. Sarah, what happened before your father died? She went silent. Then she whispered, Mom, there are things about Dad you don't know. The call ended. I looked at the locked box again. For 38 years, I thought I knew my husband completely. Now my children were telling me that the man I had loved all those years had been keeping a secret from me. I inserted the key. The lock clicked. I lifted the lid. Inside was a stack of photographs, a small envelope, a bank book, and something that made my heart stop. A hospital bracelet. It had my husband's name on it, but the date was 6 months before he died. I picked up the envelope. My name was written across it in Daniel's handwriting. I opened it. There was only one sentence. Eleanor, before you believe what our children tell you, ask them where they were on the night of October 14th. I froze. October 14th. I remembered that date. It was the night Daniel had supposedly been working late. The night he came home hours later than usual. The night he refused to tell me where he had been. I had completely forgotten about it. Until now. Then I noticed another piece of paper underneath the photographs. Contained 3 names. Michael, Sarah, and a third name I didn't recognize. Beside the third name, Daniel had written, They don't know that I found out. I read it twice. Then my phone rang again. This time it was Sarah. I answered. She was crying. Mom! What is it? Her voice trembled. Please close the box. Why? Because if you found the envelope. She stopped. What? Sarah took a shaky breath. Then Dad knew the truth about us. And for the first time since my husband's funeral, I wondered if the secret inside that box wasn't about Daniel at all. It might have been about my own children. I couldn't stop staring at Sarah's last message. Dad knew the truth about us. What did that mean? I closed the box, but I didn't lock it again. For the first time in 38 years, I was afraid of what my own children might be hiding from me. I took the photographs out one by one. The first showed Daniel standing outside a hospital. The second showed him sitting in his car. The third was a photograph of Michael and Sarah together. But the date written on the back made my stomach tighten. October 14th. The same night Daniel had supposedly been working late. I turned the photograph over. There were 4 words written underneath. They came together. I couldn't understand it. Why would Daniel photograph our children? And who was the third person? I picked up the bank book. It belonged to Daniel. Most of the pages were ordinary. Mortgage payments, utility bills, family expenses. Then I reached the final pages. There were several large withdrawals, all made within a few weeks of Daniel's death. The money hadn't gone to our regular account. It had gone to someone named Laura Bennett. I didn't know anyone by that name. I immediately called Michael. He answered after several rings. "Mom, who is Laura Bennett?" Silence. That silence told me more than his words could have. "Michael, I don't know. Don't lie to me." "I'm not lying. Dad transferred money to her." Another silence. Then he said, "Mom, you shouldn't be looking through that box. You knew about the money." "No." "You knew about the photographs." "No." "Then why did you ask me if I found the box?" He didn't answer. I heard another voice in the background. "Sarah." They were together. I realized something. They had both come to my house after the funeral. They had both insisted on cleaning Daniel's study. And they had both tried to keep me away from his belongings. "Are you with Sarah?" "Yes." "Put her on the phone." "She doesn't want to talk." "I don't care." A few seconds later, Sarah answered. "Mom." "Who is Laura Bennett?" She started crying. "Mom, we were going to tell you." "When?" "I don't know." "Before or after you asked me never to open your father's box?" Sarah didn't answer. I hung up. That evening I searched Daniel's study again. This time I wasn't looking for memories. I was looking for answers. I opened every drawer, checked every folder, looked behind every photograph. Then I noticed something strange about the old wall clock. Daniel had never liked that clock. He always said it was too loud. But underneath it was a small envelope taped to the wall. I pulled it down. Inside was a photocopy of a hospital record. I read the patient's name, Daniel Carter. The date was 6 months before his death. But the diagnosis shocked me. It wasn't the illness that eventually killed him. It was a completely different condition, one that required an emergency procedure. And at the bottom of the document was a handwritten note. Eleanor was never told. I sat down. Why hadn't my husband told me? Then I saw another line. Children were present. My heart began pounding. Michael and Sarah had been there. They knew. I called the hospital listed on the record. After explaining who I was told that the old records were archived. But one detail was still available. The emergency contact listed that night wasn't me. It was Sarah, my daughter. Couldn't believe it. Why would Sarah be listed as Daniel's emergency contact instead of his wife? Then the receptionist said something else. There's also a note here saying Mr. Carter requested that his wife not be contacted. I froze. My husband requested that? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. I thanked her and hung up. For several minutes I just sat there. My husband had been in the hospital. My children had known. And he had specifically asked them not to tell me. But why? Then I remembered the third name from the box. I picked up the paper. Laura Bennett. I searched the name in Daniel's old address book. Nothing. Then I looked through his emails. Nothing. Finally, I opened the last photograph. It showed Daniel standing outside a small house. The date was written on the back. October 14th. And underneath, Laura's house. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I drove there. The house was small and quiet. I knocked. A woman in her late 50s opened the door. She looked at me. Her face immediately changed. "You're Eleanor." I couldn't speak. She whispered, "Daniel told me you would eventually come." My heart dropped. "You knew my husband?" She nodded. "For almost a year." "Why?" She looked behind her. Then she stepped outside and closed the door. "Because Daniel asked me to help him." "Help him with what?" She hesitated, then said, "Your children." I felt the ground disappear beneath me. "What did they do?" Laura looked directly into my eyes. "Your children didn't betray your father." She paused. "They were protecting him." I shook my head. "Protecting him from what?" Laura's expression became serious. "From someone Daniel trusted." "Who?" She looked toward the road, then quietly said, "The person who wanted your husband to believe he was dying." I stared at her. "What does that mean?" Laura took a breath. "Your husband's illness wasn't what you were told." And suddenly the locked box made sense. Daniel hadn't hidden it because he didn't trust me. He had hidden it because he knew that if the truth came out, someone in our family would be exposed. Laura's words stayed with me. Someone wanted your husband to believe he was dying. I couldn't make sense of them. "My husband had a diagnosis," I said. "Doctors treated him. We all watched him get weaker." Laura nodded. "I know." "Then what are you saying?" She looked toward her house. "Come inside." I followed her. On the living room table was a thick folder. Laura placed it in front of me. "Daniel gave me this 6 months before he died." I opened it. Inside were medical reports, bank statements, emails, and copies of prescriptions. My hands began to shake. "What am I looking at?" "Your husband's investigation." "Investigation into what?" Laura pointed to one of the medical reports. "His medication." I read the name of the medication. It was the same one Daniel had been taking during the final months of his life. Laura explained that Daniel had discovered something unusual. His prescriptions had been changed several times without his knowledge. The dosage on some records didn't match the instructions he had received from his doctor. I looked up. Who changed them? That was what Daniel was trying to find out. Did he know? He suspected someone close to him. My heart sank. Who? Laura didn't answer. Instead, she opened another folder. Inside was a copy of a bank transfer. The recipient was a company I recognized. It was connected to a private medical service Daniel had used. But the payment hadn't come from Daniel. It had come from an account belonging to Michael, my son. I stared at the document. No. Laura said nothing. Michael paid this company? Yes. Why? That's what Daniel wanted to know. I felt betrayed all over again. My son had told me he knew nothing. Yet there was his name. Right there. On the document. Was Sarah involved? Laura nodded. She knew some of it. Some of what? That your husband suspected something was wrong. I closed my eyes. Everything was becoming more confusing. My children knew. Daniel knew. Laura knew. And I was the only person who had been kept in the dark. Then Laura handed me a small envelope. This is the most important thing. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note from Daniel. Laura, if Eleanor ever comes to you, tell her this first. Michael and Sarah are not the people she should be afraid of. I read it again. Then again. My husband had specifically written my name. He had expected me to discover the truth. But why had he warned me about my children? I looked at Laura. Who should I be afraid of? She took a deep breath. Daniel never wrote the name down. Why? Because he believed the person was watching him. My stomach tightened. Watching him? Yes. Who? Laura walked to a cabinet and pulled out another photograph. It showed Daniel outside a clinic. Standing several feet behind him was a man. I recognized him immediately. My husband's longtime doctor, Dr. Robert Hale. The doctor who had treated Daniel during his final year. The doctor who had visited our home several times. The doctor who had stood beside me at the funeral. I stared at the photograph. Why was he following Daniel? Laura shook her head. I don't know. I turned the photograph over. There was another message from Daniel. Ask Dr. Hale why he changed my records. My heart began racing. I suddenly remembered something from the funeral. Dr. Hale had pulled me aside and said, Eleanor, Daniel didn't want you to know how serious things really were. At the time, I had been too heartbroken to question him. Now I wondered if that had been true at all. I stood. I need to talk to him. Laura grabbed my arm. Not yet. Why? Because Daniel wasn't finished. She opened a second envelope. Inside was a small USB drive. Daniel recorded a conversation with Dr. Hale. My hands went cold. Where is the recording? On the drive. I took it, but before I could put it in my bag, my phone rang. It was Michael. I answered. Mom, where are you? Why? Because I know you found Laura. I froze. How do you know? I've been trying to protect you. You've been lying to me. I had to. Why did you pay that medical company? Silence. Then Michael said, because Dad asked me to. I looked at Laura. What? Michael continued. Dad discovered someone was changing his medical records. Who? I don't know. Don't lie. I'm not. His voice broke. Mom. Dad made me promise not to tell you because he thought you were being watched too. My heart stopped. Watched by who? Michael didn't answer. Then he said, Mom, listen carefully. Go home. Take the box. Lock every door. And don't talk to Dr. Hale. I whispered, why? Michael's voice became almost inaudible. Because Dad believed Dr. Hale knew exactly what was happening to him. The call ended. I looked at Laura. She was pale. Then her phone rang. She checked the screen. Her expression changed completely. Who is it? She didn't answer. I looked at the screen. The caller's name was visible. Dr. Robert Hale. Laura rejected the call. Seconds later, a message appeared. She opened it. Contained only one sentence. You should not have given Eleanor the drive. Laura looked at me. Neither of us spoke. Then another message arrived. Daniel made the same mistake. My hands tightened around the USB drive. For the first time, I realized something terrifying. The person Daniel had been afraid of might already know that I had found the box. And now, they knew I had the evidence too. I put the USB drive into my bag and stood up. I'm going home. Laura shook her head. Eleanor, don't go alone. I have to. Why? Because if someone is watching me, I need to know how much they already know. Laura looked worried. Then at least take someone with you. I thought about calling Michael. But after everything I had discovered, I wasn't sure whom I could trust. Then my phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. You should stop asking questions about Daniel. I stared at the screen. A second message appeared. The box was meant to stay closed. My blood ran cold. Someone knew about the box. Someone knew I had opened it. And someone knew about Laura. I looked at her. Who has your number? She shook her head. Only a few people. Does Dr. Hale have it? Yes. I put my phone away. I need to hear Daniel's recording. Laura nodded. We connected the USB drive to her laptop. There were several files. Most were documents. One audio file was dated October 14th. The same night Daniel had disappeared for several hours. I clicked it. First, there was silence. Then Daniel's voice. Robert, I need you to tell me the truth. Another voice answered. Dr. Hale, you're misunderstanding the situation. Daniel sounded angry. My medical records were changed. I didn't change them. Then who did? Silence. Daniel continued. You told my family I was getting worse. You told me I had very little time. But the latest tests don't say that. Dr. Hale's voice became quieter. Daniel, you need to accept what is happening. No. Daniel paused. I've spoken to another specialist. Another silence. Then Daniel said, they believe my treatment was deliberately altered. My heart stopped. The recording continued. Dr. Hale replied, you don't know what you're talking about. I know enough. Then Daniel said something that made my entire body go cold. I know someone has been paying you. The recording suddenly became muffled. Then I heard a chair move. Dr. Hale said, who told you? Daniel answered, your mistake was thinking I wouldn't check my own records. The recording ended. I stared at the laptop. Laura whispered, he knew. I nodded. He knew something was wrong. Then I noticed another audio file. It was dated 3 days later. I opened it. Daniel's voice sounded weaker. October 17th. If this recording is being heard, I may not be able to finish this myself. He paused. I've made copies of everything. The financial records. The medical records. The conversations. I gave one copy to Laura. One to Michael. And one. The recording stopped for several seconds. Then he continued. One copy is hidden somewhere Eleanor would never think to look. I leaned closer. Where? Daniel answered. Inside the house. I looked at Laura. The box. No, she said. Then where? We listened. Daniel continued. Eleanor will probably find the box first. If she does, she'll think it's about the children. But it's not. He paused. It's about the person who has been manipulating all of us. Then the recording ended. I sat completely still. The box had been a distraction. Daniel had deliberately placed clues inside it. He knew I'd find it eventually, but he didn't want the wrong person to find the real evidence. I suddenly remembered the house, the old study, Daniel's desk, the wall clock, the hidden envelope. Maybe there was another hiding place. I returned home that evening. I didn't tell Michael or Sarah. I locked the front door. Then I went straight to Daniel's study. I searched everything again. Books, drawers, cabinets, nothing. Then I noticed his old armchair. It had been in the same corner for almost 20 years. I moved it. Nothing. I checked underneath. Still nothing. Then I noticed a tiny scratch on the wooden floor. The chair had been moved recently. I pulled it farther away from the wall. There was a narrow wooden panel beneath it. I opened it. Inside was a small black case. My heart started racing. I opened the case. Inside were several memory cards, photographs, a handwritten notebook, and one envelope. The envelope had only one word, Eleanor. I opened it. Inside was a single page, my husband's handwriting. If you've reached this point, then the box worked. I smiled through tears. For the first time since his death, I felt like Daniel was speaking directly to me. Then I read the next sentence. I need you to understand one thing. Michael and Sarah were never my enemies. They were protecting me. I stopped. Then came the sentence that changed everything. The person I feared most was not a stranger. I turned the page. There was a name. I read it once. Then again. My hands began shaking. It was the name of someone I had trusted for years. Someone who had been inside our home. Someone who had comforted me after Daniel's death. Someone who knew every detail about our family. And underneath the name, Daniel had written, "He knows where everything is." I heard a noise downstairs, a door closing. I froze. Someone was inside my house. I grabbed the notebook and quietly moved toward the hallway. Then I heard a familiar voice. "Eleanor." My heart stopped. It was Michael. I stepped out. "Michael." He looked relieved. "Mom, thank God. What are you doing here?" "I came to check on you." I stared at him. Then I noticed something. His hands were trembling. "Michael." "What? Who were you talking to outside?" His expression changed. "Nobody." I looked toward the window. A car was parked across the street. Dark windows. Engine running. Michael saw it too. His face went pale. "Mom." "What?" He whispered. "That's Dr. Hale's car." Before either of us could move, the car started driving away. Michael grabbed my arm. "Mom, we have to go." "Why?" "Because if Dad was right." He looked at the notebook in my hand. "Then he knows you found the real evidence." I looked at Daniel's final letter again, and suddenly I understood why my husband had hidden everything so carefully. He hadn't been preparing for his death. He had been preparing for the day I would finally discover the truth. Michael locked the doors while I stood in Daniel's study, still holding the notebook. "Mom, show me what Dad wrote." I hesitated. After everything that had happened, trusting anyone felt impossible. But Michael looked genuinely frightened. I handed him the page. He read the name. His face went pale. "You know him," I said. Michael looked at me. "Yes." "Who is he?" Michael swallowed. "His name is Jonathan Reed." I frowned. "Jonathan." "He worked with Dad years ago. I've met him." "I know." "He came to the funeral." Michael nodded. "He was one of Dad's closest business partners." I stared at the page. "Why would Dad be afraid of him?" Michael didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "Because Jonathan knew about the money." "What money?" "The money Dad discovered was moving through the company." I remembered the bank statements. "So Jonathan was behind it?" "We don't know. But Dad wrote his name." "Yes." Michael sat down. "Mom, there's something else you need to know." "What?" "Dad didn't trust Jonathan for a long time." "Why didn't he tell me?" "Because he was afraid you'd get involved." I looked at my son. "And you knew?" "Yes." "How long?" "Almost a year." I felt hurt. "You kept this from me too." "I was trying to protect you." I shook my head. "Everyone keeps saying that." Michael looked down. "I know." Then I noticed something sticking out of the notebook. A small folded piece of paper. I pulled it out. It was a list of dates. October 14th, October 17th, November 2nd, December 9th, and finally, March 18th, the date Daniel died. Beside each date was a single initial, J. Michael stared at it. "Mom." "What?" "That last date." "What about it?" "Dad wasn't supposed to see Jonathan that day." I looked at him. "How do you know?" "Because I was there." I froze. "You were there?" Michael nodded. "The night Dad died." My voice became quiet. "Where?" "At the house." "Couldn't believe it." "You told me you were at home." "I lied." "Why?" "Because Dad made me promise." "What happened?" Michael looked toward the window. "I came to see him." "Was Jonathan there?" "Yes." My heart sank. "What did they argue about?" "I don't know." "You were there." "Not inside." Michael explained that he arrived shortly before Daniel became seriously ill. He saw Jonathan leave through the side entrance. Then he found Daniel in his study. Dad was still conscious. What did he say? Michael's eyes filled with tears. He told me to take the box. That's it. He said, if your mother asks, tell her nothing until she finds it herself. I looked at the wooden box sitting on the desk. Daniel had known. He had planned everything. But there was still one question. What happened after Jonathan left? Michael hesitated. Dad told me something else. What? He said the person behind everything wasn't Jonathan. I stared at him. Then why did Dad write his name? I don't know. Michael pulled out his phone. I have something. He showed me an old photograph. It was taken inside Daniel's office. Jonathan stood beside Daniel. But there was another person in the background. I recognized her immediately. Laura, the woman who had given me the USB drive. I looked at Michael. Why is Laura in this photograph? Michael shook his head. That's what Dad was trying to figure out. I felt a chill. Maybe Laura wasn't helping us. Maybe she was part of the secret. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Nobody spoke. Hello. Silence. Then a man's voice whispered. You should stop looking for the truth. I recognized the voice. It was Jonathan. How did you get my number? He ignored the question. Daniel thought he could expose us. Us. There was a pause. Then he said, You're asking the wrong questions, Eleanor. What do you want? I want you to understand something. What? Your husband wasn't betrayed by his business partner. I gripped the phone. Then who betrayed him? Jonathan's voice became quiet. Someone inside your own family. The call ended. I looked at Michael. He had heard everything. Neither of us spoke. Then Sarah called. Michael answered. She sounded terrified. Where are you? At Mom's. Is the box there? Yes. Sarah went silent. Then she whispered, Mom. What? Don't trust Michael. I looked at my son. His face went completely pale. Sarah continued, Dad never gave Michael the box. Michael immediately stood. Sarah, stop. But she kept talking. He stole it. I stared at Michael. He shook his head. Mom, that's not true. Sarah's voice broke. Mom, please believe me. Then the line went dead. I looked at my son. He looked at me. And for the first time since Daniel died, I couldn't tell which of my children was telling the truth. Then Michael quietly said, Mom. What? There is one thing I never told you. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small silver key, and placed it on the table. I recognized it immediately. It was the key to the second lock on Daniel's box. My heart stopped. The box I'd opened hadn't been fully opened at all. I stared at the small silver key on the table. Then I looked at Michael. You had this the entire time? He nodded. Why? Because Dad gave it to me. Why didn't you tell me? Because he told me not to. I looked at the wooden box. There was another lock? Michael pointed to the bottom. I turned the box over. There, hidden beneath a thin strip of wood, was a tiny keyhole I had never noticed. I inserted the key. Click. A hidden compartment opened. Inside was a single envelope, and one small memory card. The envelope had my name written on it. I opened it. Daniel's handwriting. Eleanor, if you're reading this, Michael has finally told you about the second lock. I looked at my son. He lowered his eyes. I continued reading. I gave the key to Michael because I needed someone I could trust. Then came the next line. But don't trust him blindly. I stopped. Michael looked at me. Mom. I held up my hand. I needed to finish reading. Michael knows only part of the truth. Sarah knows another part. Neither of them knows everything. I felt a strange mixture of relief and fear. My children weren't hiding one secret. They were each carrying pieces of a much larger one. Then I reached the final paragraph. The person you should look for isn't the person who appears guilty. Look at the person who has been helping you. I froze. Laura. My mind immediately went back to the cabin. The files. The USB drive. The warnings. Everything Laura had told me. Michael read my expression. Mom. I think Dad was talking about Laura. Michael shook his head. No. Why? Because Dad trusted her. Maybe that's exactly why. Michael became silent. Then the memory card began to feel heavier in my hand. I put it into the laptop. A video appeared. Daniel was sitting at his desk. He looked tired, but he was clearly speaking directly to me. Eleanor. I couldn't hold back my tears. If you're watching this, then I've run out of time. He paused. I need you to forgive me. I whispered. What did you do? He continued. I lied to you about my illness. My heart stopped. What? I knew something was wrong with my medical records, but I didn't know how far it went. I needed time to find out. He looked toward the camera. So I allowed everyone to believe I was getting worse. Covered my mouth. Daniel had known. He had deliberately hidden the truth. Then he said something that changed everything. I wanted whoever was manipulating my treatment to believe their plan was working. The video paused briefly. Then Daniel continued. But I made one mistake. I trusted the wrong person. His eyes looked directly into the camera. And that person wasn't Jonathan. I leaned closer. Daniel whispered. It was Laura. I froze. Michael stood behind me. No. Daniel continued. Laura was the person who first discovered the financial transfers. I thought she was helping me, but she wasn't. She was helping the people behind them. My heart sank. Then Daniel said, she gave them access to my medical records. She knew about the changed prescriptions. She knew about the money. And she knew where I kept the evidence. The video suddenly became distorted. Daniel's final words were barely audible. Eleanor, if Laura contacts you, don't trust her. The screen went black. I sat completely still. Everything Laura had told me was suddenly questionable. The warnings, the documents, the USB drive, the story about Dr. Hale. Maybe Laura had wanted me to discover exactly what she wanted me to discover. Then my phone rang. It was Laura. I didn't answer. She called again. Then a message appeared. Eleanor, you need to leave your house immediately. A second message followed. Michael is not telling you the truth. I looked at my son. He shook his head. Don't listen to her. Then another message arrived. This one made my heart stop. Daniel's final recording was never supposed to reach you. I stared at the screen. Michael whispered, Mom. What? He pointed toward the front window. Car had stopped outside. Someone stepped out. It was Laura. She walked toward the front door. Michael immediately locked it. Laura knocked. Eleanor. I didn't answer. Please open the door. Michael whispered, Don't. Laura's voice became desperate. Eleanor. Daniel was wrong about me. I stared at the door. Then prove it. Silence. Then Laura said, I can. How? Because I know who changed Daniel's medical records. I looked at Michael. Laura continued, and I know why Daniel was really afraid. I opened the door only slightly. Laura looked directly at me. Her face was pale. She whispered, the person controlling everything wasn't Dr. Hale. Then who? Laura looked at Michael, then at me, and said, it was Sarah. Laura stood outside my door, looking terrified. The person controlling everything was Sarah. I stared at her. That's impossible. Laura shook her head. I wish it were. Michael stepped between us. Don't listen to her, Mom. Laura looked at him. Then tell her what Sarah did. Michael went silent. That silence frightened me more than anything Laura could have said. I looked at my son. What did Sarah do? Michael finally whispered, "She helped Dad." That's not what Laura said. She doesn't know everything. Laura interrupted. Neither do you. I looked between them. Enough. I stepped outside. Both of you are going to tell me the truth. Laura took a breath. Sarah didn't control your husband's treatment. Then why did you say she did? Because she was the person who gave someone access to Daniel's medical records. My heart sank. Who? Laura looked at Michael. Dr. Hale. Michael immediately shook his head. No. Laura continued. Sarah believed she was helping your father. She thought Dr. Hale was treating him honestly. I looked at Michael. Is that true? He nodded slowly. Sarah didn't know what was happening. Then why did Dad write her name? Michael looked down. Because Dad discovered she had signed one of the authorization forms. I couldn't speak. My daughter had unknowingly opened the door to something terrible. But that still didn't explain everything. What about you? Michael looked at me. I knew Dad suspected Dr. Hale. Then why did you hide the box? Because Dad told me that if anyone came looking for it, I had to protect it. Even from me? He nodded. He was afraid someone would use you to get to the evidence. Laura suddenly said, That's not the whole story. I turned toward her. What aren't you telling me? She looked at the floor. I worked with Dr. Hale. My heart dropped. You what? I didn't know what he was doing at first. And when you found out? I tried to help Daniel. You gave me the USB. Yes. You warned me about Dr. Hale. Yes. Then why did Daniel say not to trust you? Laura's eyes filled with tears. Because he wrote that before I gave him the evidence. She pulled a folder from her bag. Inside were emails between her and Daniel. The final email was dated 2 weeks before his death. Daniel had written, If Eleanor ever finds the box, help her. She deserves to know the truth. I looked at Laura. Then why didn't you tell me sooner? Because Daniel made me promise to protect your children. I closed my eyes. For the first time, the pieces began fitting together. Sarah hadn't betrayed us. Michael hadn't stolen the box. Laura hadn't been working against us. They had all been carrying different pieces of Daniel's plan. But one question remained. Where is Dr. Hale now? Laura looked at me. Gone. Gone where? He left town yesterday. My stomach tightened. Why? Because the police recovered Daniel's medical records. I immediately called the police. Within an hour, investigators arrived. They examined the box, the memory card, the medical documents, and the recordings. Then one officer looked at me. Mrs. Carter, there's something you need to see. He showed me a document. It was a payment record. Dr. Hale had received money from a private company connected to Daniel's business. But the payments had started years earlier. Long before Daniel became ill. The officer said, This appears to be part of a larger financial scheme. I asked, Was Dr. Hale responsible for my husband's death? The officer shook his head. We don't have evidence proving that. I felt strangely relieved. Because after everything I discovered, I didn't want another tragedy. I just wanted the truth. That evening, Sarah came home. The moment she saw me, she started crying. Mom, I'm sorry. I hugged her. You didn't betray me. She pulled back. How do you know? Because your father knew you were trying to help him. She cried harder. I thought I had ruined everything. You didn't. Then she told me something Daniel had never put in the recordings. On the night before he died, he had called Sarah. He told her, If your mother ever finds the box, don't stop her. Let her open it. Let her find the truth. Sarah had spent years believing she had failed him. But she hadn't. She had simply been following instructions from a man who knew he might not live long enough to explain everything himself. That night, I sat alone in Daniel's study. I opened the notebook one final time. A folded piece of paper fell out. I unfolded it. Contained only one sentence. Eleanor, the box was never meant to protect my secrets. It was meant to protect you from them. I began to cry. Then I noticed something written underneath. A final date, October 14th, the night everything had started. And beside it, Daniel had written, "Ask Eleanor where she was that night." I froze. Why would Daniel ask me about myself? I remembered. That night I had been at home. Or at least, I thought I had been. Then a memory returned. A memory I hadn't thought about in years. Someone had knocked on our door that night, and I had let them inside. I suddenly remembered who it was. Dr. Hale. I stared at the page. Maybe Daniel hadn't been asking me to investigate my children. Maybe he had been trying to make me remember something I had completely forgotten. Something that happened inside my own house. And if I was remembering correctly, Dr. Hale hadn't come alone. Couldn't sleep that night. Daniel's final note kept running through my mind. Ask Eleanor where she was that night. I had been so focused on everyone else's secrets that I had forgotten to question my own memory. October 14th. I closed my eyes and tried to remember. Daniel had come home late. He looked worried. I remembered asking him what happened. He said he was tired. Then there had been a knock at the door. I opened it. Dr. Hale was standing there, but someone else had been with him. Who? I sat up suddenly. Jonathan, Daniel's business partner. They had both entered our house that night. I remembered them going into Daniel's study. I remembered Daniel telling me to stay in the kitchen. Then I remembered something else. I had heard them arguing. I couldn't remember the words, but I remembered Daniel saying, "You promised me this would stop." My heart started beating faster. I searched the house for anything connected to that night. Then I found an old calendar in Daniel's desk. October 14th was circled. Underneath it, Daniel had written, "Meeting at home. Hail Jonathan." I stared at the words. So Daniel had known they were coming. This wasn't a random visit. It had been planned. I called Michael. "Mom, do you know about a meeting Dad had with Dr. Hale and Jonathan on October 14th? He went quiet. "Yes. Why didn't you tell me?" "Dad didn't want you involved." "What happened?" "I don't know everything." "Tell me what you know." Michael explained that Daniel had discovered money moving from his company into several private accounts. One of those accounts was connected to a medical organization. Another was connected to Jonathan. Daniel suspected they were working together, but he didn't have enough evidence. So what did he do? He secretly recorded their meetings. I looked at the memory card. That's why he kept the recordings. Yes. Did he know about Sarah? No. Then why did he mention her? Because she accidentally signed a document that gave Dr. Hale access to Dad's records. I finally understood. Sarah had unknowingly become part of the chain, but she wasn't the person controlling it. I asked Michael one final question. "Where is Jonathan?" "I don't know." Then I heard another voice behind him. "Sarah." "Mom." "Yes. I know where he is." I froze. "Where?" She gave me an address. It was the old office building Daniel had used before retiring. I drove there with Michael and Sarah. The building was almost empty. We found Jonathan in Daniel's old office. He looked exhausted. He didn't run. He simply sat behind the desk. "I knew you'd come," he said. I walked toward him. "Tell me the truth." He looked at me. Daniel was right about some things. Some. He believed I was stealing from the company. "Were you?" "Yes." My heart sank. "But I wasn't the person who changed his medical records." "Then who?" Jonathan looked at me. Dr. Hale. Why? Because Hale was being paid by someone else. Who? Jonathan hesitated. Then he said, an investor who wanted control of Daniel's company. I finally understood the bigger picture. The money, the medical records, the pressure on Daniel. It had all been connected. Dr. Hale had manipulated Daniel's medical information while Jonathan had helped move money through the company. But there was one thing Jonathan insisted on. I never wanted Daniel dead. I believed him, not because he deserved my trust, but because Daniel's recordings supported part of his story. The police later recovered additional evidence from the company. Dr. Hale was eventually questioned. Jonathan cooperated with the investigation, and the truth finally became clear. Daniel had discovered the scheme months before his death. He deliberately allowed everyone to believe he was getting worse while secretly collecting evidence. The locked box wasn't a confession. It was a roadmap. Every photograph, every bank statement, every name, every date. Daniel had designed it so that I could eventually understand what happened without putting myself in danger. But there was one final surprise. When I returned home, I found another envelope inside the box. I opened it. Daniel had written, "If you've made it this far, then you know the truth." I smiled through tears. Then I read the final paragraph. "I never wanted you to remember me as a sick man. I wanted you to remember me as your husband." I couldn't stop crying. He continued, "The box was never about exposing our children. It was about giving you a chance to understand why I kept certain things from you. Forgive me for the secrets, and forgive yourself for not seeing them." I held the letter against my chest. For months, I had believed my husband had left me with a mystery. But he hadn't. He had left me with the truth. My children came into the room. Sarah sat beside me. Michael took my hand. For the first time in months, none of us were hiding anything. I looked at them. "Your father spent his final months trying to protect this family." Sarah nodded through tears. "And now," I looked at the wooden box, "now we stop letting his secrets divide us." Michael smiled. We closed the box together. Not because we were afraid of what was inside anymore, but because we finally understood it. Daniel had spent his final days protecting the people he loved. And somehow, even after he was gone, he still found a way to bring his family back together.